Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at the advertising, publicity, and sales promotion. Of the four P's, we've already covered the product, we've covered the place, we've covered the, basically that's it so far. So we're going to cover now the promotion as well as the price. But before we get into price, we're going to really focus on promotion. What is promotion? What is the promotion process? What is the marketing strategy planning process for promotion? As you can see in the quadrants, we have a place for the product, the price, we have promotion, but at the center we have the consumer. So right now we're going to take a look at promotion, and we're going to focus on the advertising components as well as the publicity components. Okay, so let's think in terms of the international dimensions and why they are important. Remember my lecture a few weeks ago when I talked about the Chevy Nova. I had indicated that the Chevy Nova sold wonderfully in the US. Unfortunately, when that product was moved to or trying to be sold in Mexico, what happened? It did not sell. Why? The interpretation of the Chevy Nova simply meant no go. So a part of the promotion process is really thinking big, thinking internationally, thinking in terms of how can this product send a message or convey a particular message, literally internationally. Very important. When we think in terms of the objectives for advertising and promotion strategies, we have to think in terms of setting ad objectives, and we have to think in terms of the strategic decisions. We have to think in terms of the position of the brands, what product are we going to put out there in the marketplace, and how that product is positioned in the marketplace. Remember last week when we talked about or when we saw the movie, and we talked about this later, the mayonnaise. The shape of the mayonnaise container determined whether or not people wanted to buy the mayonnaise. And the illustration in the film showed a mayonnaise that was slender. You know, the packaging was nice and tall and slender, and it was shapely. The other packaging was in the form of a Buddha. And that particular product did not sell because the subliminal messages, because of that positioning, showed that, hey, you know what? People are thinking, if I buy that mayonnaise that's shaped like a Buddha, then the implications, I might gain weight. So positioning is extremely important when it comes to brands. The other piece, we're looking at introducing new products. How do you have a product that you believe is a fantastic product, and how are you going to get that product in the marketplace? How are you going to introduce the product in the marketplace so that the consumers are aware that that product exists? The other piece, what outlets? How many outlets? Where are those outlets going to be located? You got to think about it. Look at Starbucks. I was out today, literally, and I saw 3 different Starbucks buildings. Literally, there's the standalone building. Then there was a Starbucks next to the standalone building, which happens to be in a Safeways. Then there was another business that housed the Starbucks, all within 2 blocks. So you have to think in terms of how many outlets, where they're going to be located, when people are going to want to buy the products at the particular locations, and so forth. Think about the contracts. Now, in the previous movie that you watched about the Pepsi America, think in terms of the different contractual agreements that are out there. What type of contractual agreement should you have with the wholesaler, the retailer, the manufacturer, or even directly to the consumer? There are ongoing contractual agreements at all levels in the vertical chain. These are things that must be strategically decided on and mapped out so that there are measurable outcomes in the end, and that everybody knows exactly what the expectations are from the very beginning of where the product is produced all the way to the very end, in terms of when that product is sold to the end user. And next we have the sales force. You got to have a sales force that is knowledgeable, a sales force that has all the supporting mechanisms so that they can do a really good job. Think in terms of all the examples that I used in the classroom when I talked about how the different gaps within the business and how the consumers may perceive what they're going to get from the management will be very different than what the management perceives that the consumer wants. So the sales force has to be trained, and they have to know what they're doing and know how to sell the product, know how to build long-term relationships, and so on. And then getting immediate action. How do you do that? That is a really important piece when it comes to marketing, sales, service, promotion. All of these variables come together. The key is, how do you get your consumers to act on the message immediately? The other thing, building relationships. Now, we talked about relationship building in several lectures. Right now, we're thinking in terms of, how do you get a consumer to want to buy a product, but how do you build long-term relationships? How do you maintain those relationships? And that's where the goodwill comes in. You got to create goodwill with your consumers, and that gets into the final piece here, and that's building trust. If you're going to sell a product or a service to your consumer or whoever that may be, the key is, can they trust that this product is going to do exactly what you claim it's going to do as a marketing manager? Now we have to think in terms of, the objectives and the guide of implementation. We have to think in terms of the awareness of the product, the service, whatever that may be. Think in terms of, the teaser campaigns to get you to really buy that product, or even awareness of the product. There are pioneering ads, there's jingles and slogans and just different buzzwords that's really going to get you to start thinking about the product or the service. Think about some of the taglines when you think in terms of Walmart, everyday low prices. Okay, that's their tagline, that's their slogan. They also have their brand. There's the virtual advertising. You can't get on the internet unless there's something out there that's going to literally captivate you. There's something that's going to try to get your attention. It could be a pop-up, it can be a banner, it's going to be noise, it's going to be all kinds of movement going on in terms of when you're on the internet. Those are ways to get your awareness so that you can click that button or look at the product or the service or whatever it is being literally announced to you. And other announcements. You could be standing in your bank, minding your own business in line, and there would be some kiosk in the background or some type of video in the background selling you more products or more services. And you may not necessarily be conscious of some of these things, but unconsciously and subconsciously, your mind is storing a lot of this information. So these are some of the things that the marketing manager does to really guide the implementation to get us aware as consumers that that product exists. Now, next we have the interest. How can you inform an individual or target audiences that the product is there? What are you going to do? Give them a descriptive layout of what those ads are? Are you going to have an image? Are you going to have celebrities literally pitching the product or the service, whatever it may be? Are you going to have something where the consumers has to search for the ads? I mean, let me just say this. If there's a product that is out there that you want, you're going to really go after that product, and you're going to look for the bargains. You're going to look for the ads. There are email ads. There's demonstration kinds of things that can be done to get you to be more interested in the product or the service. QVC does a great thing. They literally demonstrate how products work live on the television set. And they know if they show how that product works, if they allow people to touch the product, sample the product, or whatever it is, people may tend to want the product even more so. They'll be more interested in the product. Think about going to your Costco on the weekends or whenever you go. There's products that you can literally touch, you can experience, you can eat. I love to go and just eat the products. Think about going to your local Apple store. They make sure at Apple that you get an opportunity to touch the product, experience the product, and there's no pressure to buy the product. But the demonstration in and of itself will allow you as a consumer to be more interested in that product. Now let's think in terms of the other piece. Just say you bought the product. The key is the evaluation of the product or the trial of the product. So these are two separate things, but they're very important. It's because your competitors are out there that are definitely trying to get some of your business or whatever it may be. So if you get, people to try the product, they get a chance to assess, experience the product, they get to try that product for 30 days or 90 days or whatever it may be, there is a high probability they're going to want the product. Testimonials, very important. Got to think in terms of, what's going to build that long-term relationship. Now let's look at the confirmation and the reminder ads and the informatives, like why did you buy the product or whatever. But the reminder ads, usually reminder ads are very short. When a product's first introduced in the marketplace, that product is well articulated, well explained. You got to introduce the brand, you got to talk about the product. There may be a 1-minute infomercial on that product. Once that product is in the marketplace and people have experienced that product, they buy the product, then all you got to do sometimes is just show the brand. And that is so important. As I mentioned in many lectures, there's just a brand awareness. When you see that swoosh sign, you think in terms of Nike. When you see the golden arches, what do you think of? You think of McDonald's. When you see the Target symbol, you think of the Target shopping place. And so there's so many products that are out there that all they have to do is show the brand, and then that is a reminder advertisement, and they need not say any more, for the most part, for established target audiences. Now keep in mind, this does not apply if the target segments are not aware of the product at that particular time. You got to start all over again. And the last piece, and we're looking at the decisions. Direct action retail, we have ads, and we have the point of purchase ads, we have price deal offers. Hey, go back to the book, check it out, read it, understand it, and you'll know what that is. And let's move on to the next. So what we have next would be the different types of or different kinds of advertising. We have the institutional advertising, we have the product advertising, pioneering advertising, competitive advertising, and reminder advertising. What I'd like for you to do is take a moment, look up those 5 variables. Now you already know what product advertising is because we talk about products every week that we're in class. But remember this, when it comes to the promotion piece, promotions has a couple of other variables that they add to it. And I hope you remember those variables. We're already looking at the product, the place, the price, hey, the promotion, and then we have presentation. That's another variable. And there's one more, and I want you to figure that out, and we'll talk about that in just a little while. Okay, so right now we have to think of the competitive advertising and the emphasis of selected demand, the selective demand. So we have like Hershey's chocolate, but when we're looking at this particular slide, it's more than just regular candy or whatever, but we're talking about the naturally, a source of something to, something good for your body, the antioxidants. Now, this is what the medical field is doing. They're saying if you eat a piece of chocolate, and it has to be that pure chocolate, the cocoa or whatever, there's a particular type of chocolate that the medical profession has said, if you eat this chocolate every day, it can help decrease, hey, heart disease. Whoa, that's pretty cool. So This type of chocolate now is something that's different that, Hershey's saying, wait a minute, we can get into a whole new different market if we can say that this is good for your body. And so that's another kind of advertising, is making the consumer believe that this is something great for their body. And guess what we're going to do? That's another market segment or segments, and people are going to want it. What we have here, so let's look at competitive advertising. When it comes to competitive advertising, we have to think in terms of one thing: comparative advertisement. So when you go to the store, let's go to CVS for a moment, and let's think in terms of walking to the very back of CVS, where there is one particular area. Usually that is the pharmacy. Some CVS's is over to the side. You walk into CVS, is going to be either your extreme right side of CVS or the extreme left side. But in some CVS's and most CVS's, it's probably in the back. So whether the CVS pharmacy is in the back of the store or on either side, think about this. When you're standing in line and you're waiting your turn to walk up to the pharmacist, you can literally look at some of the positionings of the products. And normally you're going to see tags that are going to kind of stick out from the facing of the products. And there's going to be national brands, there's going to be your house brands. When you're looking at comparative advertising, it's always going to ask you to compare the national brand with the house brand. Extremely important. And then usually there's going to be a price difference. Most house brands will say, look at the national brand, read the active ingredients, and compare. Something very important that a lot of marketing people are doing. They're making sure that they do the comparisons. Okay, there's the reminder advertising, and that's not going to take a lot of extra dollars to remind. And I've already talked about the reminding advertising and how that reinforces a favorable relationship. So go back to the reading and think about the reminding advertising and why it's so important to marketing managers. Okay, now we have the institutional advertising, and that is, remembering our name, the institution, whether it's Apple, whether it's HP, whatever that particular product brand is, the key, that's the institution. It connects the different divisions of the company. It sheds favorable light. It also advocates the causes and the ideas for better product service, improved reliability, and so on and so forth. What I'd like for you to do now, let's stop. I'd like for you to stop, and I want you to answer this question. And that is, let's look and think in terms of what you have learned. Read this particular question and then answer the question, and then put your question in the appropriate space after you have looked at the entire video slides, okay? So you want to pause right now, take a look at the questions, and then you come back to resume later, okay? Okay, so now thank you for coming back. You've answered the two questions, and I know that you've probably gotten the right answer, but this is what we need to think of in terms of next, and that is coordinating advertising efforts with cooperative relationships. So when we think in terms of the vertical marketing distribution and we start thinking about the horizontal distribution, we have to think in terms of the channel captains and who's in charge of what. We have to think in terms of, if there's when there's a manufacturer involved, then where does that product go? Now, we've talked in class about the wholesaler and how products can go to multiple wholesalers, and then it can go to the retailer, and then it goes to the actual consumer. So we're looking at supply chain, extremely important. Those are key elements. We have to think in terms of advertising allowances. How much money is it going to take to promote this product? How much money do you have to spend in order to get your product on the shelf? We talked about shelf space last week. The film, case in point, talked about the thousands of dollars it costs to get a product on the shelf. The cooperative advertising, the integrated marketing communication is very important. And with all those variables, there are always ethical concerns. And we've talked about ethics, but think in terms of the ethical implications in all of these different variables. Other issues that we have to think about are the best medium. How do you get the message out there to your particular audience? So we have to think in terms of the promotional objectives. What are those objectives? And you know what? It will take literally sometimes a year or two just to come up with the right campaign to create the right message to get the consumers to act on that message. So what are the objectives? Think in terms of the target markets. Who are they? And when I say target markets, I'm talking about multiple markets that are out there. What are their characteristics? Keep in mind that the characteristics of a market can change very, very quickly. So there's constant research and development along the way. You can't get away from it. What funds? There are literally hundreds of thousands of dollars that go into a marketing program. So what type of funds are available? And this has nothing to do with the actual sales of the product. We're talking about your promotional campaign is very different than your marketing campaign. Very, very different. And then also the type of media. What media are you going to use? Are you going to use television, radio? Are you going to go viral? Go on the internet? Are you going to do social media? And on and on. So we have to think in terms of emphasizing on the target. Who are the targets? How are we going to reach these particular markets? Oh boy, I tell you, when it comes to the mail, direct mail is grown. But is it really the most effective way to reach the market segments? Well, it all depends on your market segment. Very, very important. There are some people that will take any mail other than their bills, and they may even take their bills and toss them in the trash can. If people see mail coming to their house and it says, "Dear occupant," or "Dear last person that lived in this address," chances are they'll see that as junk mail and they'll just toss it. Then there's a more traditional media that people might use, and that may be, television, radio, could be newspaper, some type of other direct way of connecting, such as magazines. But keep in mind, you must know what your audience, how they get information. And based on the way in which they get information is the way you want to target your audience. Then we have specialized media. Hey, let's look at social media. That's very specialized. That is growing leaps and bounds. And then we have must buy, may use up funds. And so the must buys, whatever that is, you have to think in terms as a marketing manager, what would be the best way of identifying your target and getting that target to respond. Okay, so now we're looking at marketing on the internet. I like for you to look at these variables. I'm not going to go into details, but they're pretty direct and to the point. We have direct response desire. People buy on the internet very quickly because, hey, you know what? All you got to do is click a button, give your credit card, and you got the product in a few days. We also have some sites offer better targeting. I mean, there are certain sites that know exactly who you are when you're on their site, how much you're going to buy, when you're going to buy, what your last purchase was. Think in terms of Amazon, and just think in terms of if you go to Amazon, they can tell you what your last purchase was. They're going to tell you purchases of like, kind, and quality of products that you might want. Think in terms of if you are downloading some iTunes or whatever it is, they're going to tell you the most popular songs in the genre that you bought your last CD or whatever. So you're being watched all the time, and you're giving the marketing folks tons and tons of data on who you are, what you're doing, when you do what you do. Think in terms of the film that we watched last week and how there are certain internet devices that are used to track what you do in the store. You have your phone with you in the store, and that phone is linked to coupons. Well, you're being tracked as you're walking up and down every aisle. You're being tracked, and you might get ads literally popping in your email box or whatever because the marketing people know where you've been and you've given out these clues. Okay, and so there's keywords that consumers can use to search for different products or services. There's the behavioral targeting, and also there's the pay for performance type of targeting as far as the advertising on the internet. And then also, of course, there's always fraud. So in anything that you think in terms of what's ever on the internet, there's going to be fraud that's literally going to follow the path. And we have to be careful as consumers. Okay, so planning the best message. Last week we saw the public service announcement. And the public service announcement, we saw them literally on video. We saw the girls that were texting and what happened when they're driving and texting and how people died. We saw the alcohol texting. We saw the alcohol person, the lady with the cancer. We saw all sorts of things. Well, let me tell you the public service announcements, just like you see here, prevent forest fires. This billboard ad is designed to communicate the best way to let you know that, hey, if you smoke or if you light a fire or you do something in the forest, you can burn the place down. And so what better visual they can do than to show you something that's all burnt up. Okay, so when it comes to the AIDA model, I talked about this many times in the class, and that is getting the attention, the interest, the desire, and the action. Extremely important. How do you get your consumers to really want that product? Okay, so what I'd like for you to do right now, I want you to stop, answer these questions, and then we're going to move on, or this particular story, and then move on as far as the AIDA model. Keep in mind, and I've talked about this many, many times, I know that you've probably remembered this, but the key is what do you do as a marketing promotional person to get the attention of your particular audience? How do you hold their interest? How do you create a desire? And how do you get action? So how do we deal with unfair advertising? The government will always oversee unfair advertising or advertising that is not good for the consumers, is not good for the competition, is not good for the society as a whole. The FTC makes sure that there are controls that are out there to keep the marketing people as well as the merchants and anybody that's selling anything or advertising anything. They make sure that you have to practice ethically. The other piece is the standards, and the standards are changing. They're evolving because we live in a world where a lot of people say, well, this is my right to be able to freedom of speech. I can say whatever I want, or I can do whatever I want. I can sell whatever I want, or whatever. But the bottom line is that the government is there to make sure that we are regulated as merchants, as marketing people, as owners of products, services, the whole nine yards. And then when it comes to some type of advertising and what's unfair about advertising or whatever it is, it's the support for claims that are fuzzy. So if there are claims that are not necessarily true, for example, if there's a product that the manufacturer is making claims on and we know that it is not true. Take cosmetics for an example. There was a time in which the cosmeceutical industry had indicated that there are certain products that baby boomers can use to make them look young. And they said there would be active ingredients in certain products that would make sure you get rid of all those wrinkles. Well, that was something that was absolutely incorrect. So they had to change the language in which they use as far as promoting their products and then the claims they made for the products. What we have now is the different examples of the type of publicity and the different promotion objectives. We have the attention and the interest, and that's the viral piece, and we're looking at direct to the consumers, press releases, we look at articles, and in the press, there's the gaining positioning. Again, viral videos, there's the games that are out there, the branding services and the commercials with white papers. We're looking at also the desires action, and that is the customer reviews and the case studies and the webinars. And then, of course, the last, we have the managing the relationships, and that's social media. The social media is big. That is huge. Blogging is huge, is big in online, and all these communities that are out there that gets us information and how promotion objectives are being achieved as a result of those variables. And finally, we have problems in managing the sales promotion. You know, when we start thinking about getting a brand that's out there, sometimes a brand can be overexposed, and we have how brands can erode as far as loyalty, and it's a real problem. I'd like for you to go back to your textbook and start thinking in terms of, what happens when brands become a problem, and when it comes to the need for alternative type of brands, when it comes to, strategically planning a name or creating a name for a brand, and how it's not for amateurs and it's hard to manage and it's hard to get that brand image out there to create the goodwill long term. So now that you've looked at this particular set of videos, etc., what I'd like for you to do is just recap both chapters 15 and 16. Make sure you go over the chapter on promotion, look at the sales piece of that, and then please recap last week. And we're talking about the distribution model that we looked at a little bit earlier, and how do products get to the right place at the right time for the consumers to take possession. We've completed all of the above. I'd like for you to just complete your homework assignment by the due date. You have several days to complete everything. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in a few weeks.